are under attack in this country, and at this point, it is absolutely undeniable. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jake Monroe. This is The Jake Monroe Show, and today I'm going to be talking about the fact that the UK, Britain, is attacking white men. Because, of course, they are. You watched my last video. You watched the alt-right pipeline. You watched me debunk it. You instead watched me define how the alt-left pipeline is far more likely to be for nefarious means, how that should be attacked, dismantled entirely. But I'm going to be talking specifically about the formerly Great Britain, now just that place where Starmer is. Hopefully for not much longer. Resign, asshole. Read the room. So, how are men under attack in the UK specifically? I've explained how men are under attack and throughout all of Western culture, Western civilization. They are. It's undeniable. At this point, it is observable, but now we all know that the left have they've gone mask off, haven't they? They're no longer interested in hiding their vindictive, nefarious ways. They don't care anymore. They're no longer pretending to be the good guys, they're not even trying. But as long as we remain the bad guys, they can do whatever they want. That's why they're acting that way. Anyway, specifically, how are men being attacked in Britain? Well, to do that, to answer that question, we're going to have to go back. We're going to have to go back a little bit. We're going to have to look into exactly where this is starting. It is starting in adolescence. You may have not seen this, Americans. You might be aware of it because it was a bit of a cultural phenomenon over here. Because the UK wanted something like this so hard. They wanted that, man. They were bricked up. God, they were looking for something like this. There was a show created called Adolescence. It portrayed a white boy doing his best to maintain the most villainous expression on his face. Doing his best, at the director's advice, to try and portray white young boys as evil as possible. Can you give us an evil face, Timmy? I don't know what his name was. Can you give us an evil look, an expression? More evil. No, more evil. You know what? Can someone take this kid and give him evil expression training? I want this white boy to really sell that he's evil, that he's bad. Now this was made by a dude, this guy, can't be bothered to look up his name. He was inspired to write this show about a white boy stabbing a girl because he was inspired to do so by things like red pill, like online red pill content creators. I'm assuming. I've not watched this shit, okay? I have better things to do with my life than waste my time watching this garbage. However, I do know where it came from, what inspired it, and what it's going to do now that it's been created. But what inspired this idiot to make this was he saw on the news that knife crime, you probably already know where I'm going with this, knife crime is way up. And women are being stabbed by young boys. Yeah. No, they're not white. Before you ask. No. Per thousand, actually, you're far more likely to be stabbed by a black dude. A young black man, actually. In fact, they're more likely to stab each other and then stab white dudes and then stab white women. They're quite low down. So these statistics don't lend themselves very well to the creation of this show, but the creator of this show saw that women were being stabbed or that a woman had been stabbed. I will tell you exactly the news report that he'd seen. and decided, like, why? Why is this happening, he says. Can you believe this? He was like, why is this happening? And then he decided to make a show about it where it's a white boy that did it, which is statistically very unlikely compared to other statistics and other ethnicities far more likely to do it based on per thousand. And not only that, decided to shoehorn in the red pill online social media sort of, the toxic environment that young boys tend to apparently cultivate whenever they chat online. Misogyny. Yes, misogyny. And decided to make a show about these two things, one being the cause of the other, two things together. And in typical Netflix fashion, they decided to race swap the kid. Race swap from what, Jake? I'm glad you asked that question. Because one of the most egregious crimes, one of the most despicable things to happen here in the UK, one of the most telling events that happened in the UK, telling of the kind of environment and the kind of climate we have here in the UK now in regards to the kinds of people that comprise the population. It was this guy. Now, this crime, this criminal, and his three victims here, they were never explicitly said as being the reason why he made this, but that this went huge. This was a big deal. Then Adolescence came out. Specifically because the guy that made it was inspired by girls being stabbed by boys, which is a deliberately obtuse and dense approach to what the real problem is. Now, I could stand here and go through yet more statistics like these, explaining how white men are not the problem here, but this is not about that. Okay? I could. Hell, I might. Since Prevent do not operate here in Northern Ireland, I could do that if I wish, and I might just do that. However, it's not about that today. It's not about that today. We're going to be talking about how men are under attack with a little bit of racism. Or just noticing facts, which tend to be the same thing these days. Racism, noticing facts, reading statistics, these things tend to all be the same these days. So, Adolescence was released, and in typical Netflix fashion, the race swapping happened from this dude to this kid, because of course. And how else was Netflix going to pick this up? How else? It wasn't going to be any other way. It wasn't going to be accurate, was it? So of course this had to happen in order for his show to be picked up. And then the UK government, oh, they loved it. They loved it, they loved it, they loved it so much. Oh, they couldn't get enough. Ooh, we have a Netflix show that conveys perfectly the kind of thing that we're trying to get across here in the UK government. The exact kind of narrative we're trying to spin. Excuse me, idiot director of this show. Could we use this? Could we use this in our schools? Could we show it to young boys, please? Now you might be thinking, optimistically, no. This is a terrible thing to show young boys in school. Giving them a persecution complex immediately? Influencing young boys into thinking that society hates them because they're at any point going to randomly stab a bunch of young girls for no reason. Optimistically, you might be thinking, the answer is no, we're not going to do that. Why would we do that? They did that, and now they are showing Adolescence across the nation to young boys to try and scare the fuck out of them to not, stab girls, little girls. And you've got white boys in these classes too, just being like, why the f am I here? Well, because the demographic that are actually stabbing people, and in high enough amounts for you to make a show about it, are also male. You think this is a male problem? It's all men? It's an all-male problem? This has just popped up out of nowhere? Yeah, the huge influx of immigration and non-whites invading England exponentially over the last couple of decades, you don't think that has anything to do with this increase in violent crime with knives? It's just suddenly coming out of nowhere and Andrew Tate's responsible for it? This is how they think. This is what they're thinking. And this is also what white men are thinking. This is what young white boys are thinking. Miss, can I go? I shouldn't be here. I have no intention of stabbing people. In fact, statistically speaking, I'm nowhere near as likely to stab people or women. Not as much as Ruta Cabana. Can I go? It's like, no. No, because to acknowledge the fact that statistically speaking, you're less likely to do a violent crime would be racist, so we have to lump you all in here even though you're nowhere near as likely to do that. And this is unfair. We're painting you all with the same brush, but you're all in here. White British men being attacked because of the actions of invaders. Because you're both men, must be the same. How dense. I want you to imagine, I want you to think, what kind of complex would this give a kid, right? Young girls are just like, you're doing great, sweetie, you're so amazing, you can be literally anything and everything you want to be, and you'll probably be better than a boy at doing this thing. You're amazing, you're great, I'm going to pick you first, you're going to have this position above these boys, and you're going to do fantastic. That's all women here. That's all women here these days. You don't have to give birth to kids, you don't have to uphold your side of the bargain, your responsibilities to society. Men do. You, however, sweetie, don't need to do anything that society requires you to do in order for society to continue. You can go ahead and do whatever the you want in any capacity that you like. And you're strong and you're brave and and you can do whatever you like. Right? That's women. That's girls these days. Girls, that's what girls get. Okay? In the media, in schools, everything. That is what women, that's what young women are seeing. And it shows with the behavior of young women these days. However, I want you to imagine the other side of the coin, which is young boys now being degraded, constantly being reminded that they are a potential predator, a potential criminal, and they have an innate sense of violence. And at any point, they could snap. And they're going to be on the front news, headlines, that kind of stuff. You've killed a bunch of people. And even if you don't, everyone around you is going to be afraid that you're gonna. Yeah? Women are going to be afraid of you all the time. Everyone in society is going to be afraid of you. You're always going to be seen as a potential criminal, a potential misogynist. Your potential is constantly and always being viewed as you're going to do something offensive or violent at any point, regardless of their intentions. Imagine a young boy being told this. What do you think their behavior is going to be? Now, I've already done a video about the alt-right pipeline. Congratulations, leftists. There's another way that you've just gone ahead and created that by yourselves. Good job. Leftists try so hard to make sure that, young boys don't find their way into the alt-right pipeline. Ironically, then makes them go into it. I'm just using the alt-right pipeline as the pseudonym, as the misnomer that they've assigned to it, because obviously it's that concept I'm describing. If I called it its actual thing, then people won't realize that I'm referring to this construct that the leftists made called the alt-right pipeline. Of course, what I mean is just men waking the f*** up, getting red-pilled, realizing their self-worth, discovering the masculinity, that kind of stuff. Does it end at adolescence? Being shown in schools, young boys being taught that they are a problem in society and are tolerated, and they have to be aware of their behavior at all times. They're being reminded with this absolute fiction of a show that they are dangerous. Does it end with adolescence? No. No, it does not. Schools are now being infiltrated by something called misogyny classes. Yeah. Misogyny classes. Exclusively for young boys, again. Misogyny classes are being taught to young boys in order to make them aware of their innate, intrinsic nature to want to be nasty and misogynistic and violent and abusive to women. So you've got adolescence and now you've got misogyny classes now. British men are about to be the most rebellious anti-feminists we've ever seen, and we have leftists to thank for it. Don't we? They are trying so hard, too hard, to push men down, put them in a box, so that all these commies and women can go ahead and destroy everything. Because again, like I said in my last video, the only thing that stands between these commies and these narcissistic women and destroying everything we know and love, the only thing that stands between them and that are white men. Which is why they're being attacked so horrendously. And they can't just go ahead and make these classes just for black boys, because that's racist. That would be racist if we did that. Even though it's actually addressing the problem, that would be racist. We are about to go through one of the greatest Renaissance periods in human history where the word racism is going to be used in a comedic tone. Much like I just used it. Racism is going to be one of those things that is reappropriated for comedy. Racism is, every time you hear someone use the word racism unironically, the whole room will erupt in laughter, where you will then very quickly get your ass kicked. We're about to reject the concept of racism so hard they don't even know it yet. You can't push white European men around this hard and not expect this to bite you in the ass harder than you've ever been bitten in your life. So you've got white men now, being white kids, children, white boys, young boys, being instilled with a persecution complex, with a victim complex, with this complex of self-hatred. They're going to hate themselves. There's going to be more boys in therapy than there's ever been. But the British government, oh, they were ecstatic. They're rubbing their hands together and licking their grinning lips. Flushed in the face they were with the arousal at this opportunity that adolescence had provided. So they brought that into schools, kids can watch that now, young boys, and they're making them watch that. Now they've got the misogyny classes now because of abuse, I guess. This is once again another attack. This is another active effort by the UK government to make sure that young boys are steering clear of things like red pill content. People like Andrew Tate and Fuentes, and all those other lads that are trying to give men a sense of value back again. They're trying so hard to make sure that they demonize these online red pill spaces so that young boys do not fall into it. Any boy with a sense of common sense should be able to read between the lines as to why they're doing this, When the government is really trying to tell you not to do something, you should probably be doing it. Okay? Not in every context, but in this context, where this smarmy is running everything, not for much longer, I hope. Young men are going to be like, wait, why do we have to listen to this shit? Why am I being... I've not done anything. I've not done anything. They're gonna rebel. Of course they are. Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha's coming up after Zoomers. Gen Alpha are coming. They're good. They're the iPad kids. They're the brain rot kids. They're the... We had to watch adolescence in school kids. We had misogyny training in school kids. They're going to be those kids. And I think Gen Alpha probably is going to be the most appropriate label for that generation, the most appropriate name for that generation, because they are going to be absolute tyrants. The good kind. I'm talking like Space Marines, Warhammer, that kind of thing. I don't know why I use that reference. But yeah, they're gonna reclaim everything. They're gonna be like, yeah, we were told a little too hard not to live up to our masculine potential. So we decided to do the complete opposite. No, women love this because now they no longer have to be accountable for anything. They can just act despicable, deplorable at all times. And men are terrified to call it out, to say anything about it. So they just get to continue doing what they're doing, exactly how they want to do it. Women get to do whatever they want. Literally everything but what their responsibility is to society. I've been through this before. Men do the shitty jobs. Women raise the kids. How do you think we bounce back so hard from World War II? We survived after World War II. We thrived, we flourished after World War II. We had a baby boom after World War II because of things like traditional values. Do you think this would happen today? Do you think if there was a World War III where a shit ton of men were killed in their millions, and now that more women serve in the military, women too? Though I doubt they'd actually follow through with this assertion that they want to fight on the front lines if they're presented with an actual war. I can imagine they would. World War III ends, what remains of men go back to their country, and the birth rate continues to be the same that it is now, which is below maintenance. There's no baby boom, the dwindling numbers of men, and this arrogant remaining population of women still far more interested in pursuing things like pointless careers, working for a boss, going to Zoom meetings and stuff like this. Zoom meetings and more Zoom meetings and more Zoom meetings about who cares? Who cares? Society was completely fine before a shit ton of feminists started going into the workforce and doing Zoom meetings all day. We were fine, okay? In fact, I think we were better, economically speaking. And societally speaking, we were still better. We were better. Everything was better. There was not this screaming vacuum in society for women to shirk, to ignore their responsibilities to society, their responsibilities to Western culture, their responsibilities to their race, and to the workforce, and value things like promotions over, raising a child, teaching them, playing with them, taking them to school, going through homework, which feminists have managed to convince everybody are bad things. Yeah. Going to a job that sucks ass, working for 10 hours a day, coming home exhausted after listening to your shitty, stupid, dumbass boss, having no time for yourself, these are all things that are better than having kids. You see, people they're gonna hear me being like, oh, you think women should just be at home having kids? What do you mean just? What do you mean just? You're just going to work. Being at home raising kids, that's the real heroic work. That's like the real shit. That's the real deal. You think women should be in the kitchen? What do you think's in the kitchen? That's where you feed your hungry children, where you wash their dirty clothes. And in some cases, in some people's kitchens, this is where you sit upon the table and you help your child through their homework, help them achieve things, help them discover their sense of self-worth. All these things happen in the home, from the perspective of a mother to a child. It's not just anything. You're not just a housewife. You're not just raising, that's all I'm doing, just raising kids. The fuck do you mean? When the hell did that lose value to women? To Western women, because things like that still have value to the entire planet. We need to reframe this. I mean, red pill dudes out there, like myself and various others, they know this. They know the value of raising children. They know that this is the most important thing in the world. They know this is why Western civilizations bounce back after World War I and II, because of traditional values, because the birth rate was above maintenance. We need to change how we think about this. You're not shackled at home raising children, not realizing your real potential. You're influencing the next generation of adults by raising children. In fact, how good that child grows up to be, how successful and well-adjusted this child becomes as an adult, is going to be the greatest achievement of the mother and the father who worked for this to be the result. And it's this kind of greatness, this kind of value of motherhood that has been completely destroyed and replaced with a woman's value as how useful she is to a corporation. Yeah, you're entirely replaceable. Men already knew this. We don't care, we have a responsibility. Men work at the factory or whatever, cubicle jobs, waste management, power management, construction, bricklaying, surveying, all these really shitty jobs that suck ass, that are very difficult. That's our responsibility. And we know that we're replaceable, but that's our burden to bear. Such as responsibility. They are burdens that we have to bear. We are responsible. And young men are being destroyed because young men, or men in general, know this. They have always been responsible for asserting this. They were always the authority that stood in the way of degeneracy, that made sure that the society existed and continued the way that it should in order to survive. Now the whole thing's been disrupted. And now it's being disrupted from the school level. Young boys. The UK government are specifically trying to get young boys. They're trying to manipulate them and choke out any sense of masculinity, confidence. Mothers out there watching this, are you okay? Would you be okay with this? Your precious boy, your happy little boy who giggles and smiles, whose nativities you go to, school plays, get his feet measured to get his new shoes, whose face lit up on Christmas morning. Is he a f***ing monster? Is he? Your innocent little boy who's done nothing to anybody, who you would have thrown yourself in front of traffic to protect? You're gonna let the government tell this precious little boy that he's a f***ing monster and that he's gonna hurt people? You wanna see his smile disappear? You wanna see anxiety and guilt take over where happiness used to be? Not on my watch. Not on my watch. Thank you so much for watching. I do have some merch available. It is linked down below. Some high quality stuff there. Really appreciate you even just checking it out. I really appreciate you guys actually buying stuff because this studio is not cheap. This suit, however, is. Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully I've given you something to think about. catch you later.